Hello, everyone, and welcome to another broadcast of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. I'm Rick Weaver, and as always, I'm joined by my co host, Mr. Blake Duckworth. Blake, how's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty good. It's just raining here right now. How about
Just,
yourself?
just raining. Oh, I'm fine as a frog hire, man. I've been out today and I went to the doctor this morning,
Oh
had to go
yeah,
down.
I meant to ask you about that. Everything come out good of
Oh,
that?
yeah. Went down and doctor gave me a good bill of health. I just to tell the viewers, I was diagnosed here a few months ago as having a couple of nodules on my lungs, and the doctors are kind of worried about it. That's been a little over a year ago, and I've had two MRIs and CAT scans done, and they uh, they told me today that they done one 6 months ago, and then they done one last week on me, and they told me today that the things is basically just like they was. They've not grown any. They've actually diminished just a little in size, and coloration of them is diminished. So they're not worried about them. I don't have to go back for another year and have another one done. So that was great news. I think I give all the thanks to the good Lord on that one. Uh, been been kind of a tough time for me here last year or so, worrying about all this. But I think I'm gonna be around a while to aggravate everybody. Uh, Blake, you want to open her up, buddy?
I hope everyone's doing well. And as always, guys, if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, bell notification, like, and a comment. Kind of slowed back down on subscribers right now, so let's see if we can get some new subscribers if you guys don't mind. Um, Basically, just tonight we're just going to be kind of having a discussion with Barry, as there he is. Um,
Hello, Barry. Welcome to the show, bud.
Yeah, here.
Oh yeah, we're here.
is he cutting out on your end, or is it mine?
Barry said he was having some problems, slow internet tonight.
Yeah, I am too.
Hey, I'm with AT&T, so I always have problems.
Let's get on with it.
Barry, how's things up in your neck of the woods, son?
All right. I have a pretty hard nap today. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you kindly fading out there on us.
Uh oh.
Maybe faded all the way out.
Man
uh,
down, man down.
Barry will be back with us in a minute. Tonight we're going to be kindly discussing. We had a guest on last night, Mr. Zeus Plot from Western Slope Bigfoot out in Colorado.
There he is.
Yeah, he'll be back on here in a minute. We had Zeus on last night. There's Mr. Barry. We had Zeus on last night, and Zeus was kindly telling us about
You guys there?
the. Yeah, we're here, Barry.
I can
Uh,
see Blake. I still can't see Ricky. There's a big screen where he was.
I'm sorry, Barry. What was that? Hey, folks, bear with us. Barry's having issues with his internet connection on his end tonight.
You see or hear me, Blake?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I didn't know.
Can you
I
hear
can see.
Ricky?
I don't hear him. There's just a blank screen on the side of the screen where he's supposed to be.
Do you see me?
I see you.
Hmm.
Huh.
Uh-oh.
Man down again. Yeah, as I was saying, last night we had Zeus Platt from Colorado on, and he was describing to us the Sasquatch that they have in their area out there is a lot smaller than, well, in the mountainous region of Colorado, is a lot smaller than what we have here in northwest Georgia. The one that I saw back in '81 was what I judged to be a young juvenile back then. Probably 5.5, 6 foot tall. Uh, Weighed in, I'm gonna say 350, 400 pounds. Blake's sighting that he had in 2011 was quite a lot bigger than that. Uh,
I got a question, Ricky. Do you know, like, okay, so we were talking about the timberline and stuff last night. Sorry if I don't say this right now, I'll totally forget it. But talking about, the elevation where he's located. What is the average elevation of, say, a lot of the mountain ranges in Washington State or California? I mean, I'm not for sure, so that's the reason I'm asking.
Well, it varies. I know that I've hunted Colorado. I've hunted not in his area. I've hunted around Steamboat Spring, Colorado, and I was thinking that the timberline elevation out in that area was around 6,000 to 8,000 feet. Now, I've been to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I've hunted around Jackson Hole. Been to which one? Get me Burry brought back on here. There we go, Burry. We got you.
I killed the camera, try audio only, less bandwidth.
Sounds like an alien's got him.
Burry, we got a blank screen. We kind of halfway hear you there, buddy, but we got a blank screen on you.
But, I killed the camera thinking if I was using less bandwidth with video and just good audio, maybe the camera's working. So,
I did not get any of that.
I didn't either. I couldn't hardly understand it.
Yeah, I might have just got watch one that's going to let me participate.
Burry, buddy, I'm
Can you hear me
sorry.
better now?
Yes, doing a little better right there.
That's with the camera turned on.
Huh. Y'all having storms or anything in your area, Burry?
It's been raining all day, but not hard.
I don't know. We're getting a little rain down here. I don't know if that's having anything to do with it or not. But Blake had just asked a question about the elevation out there in Colorado, Washington State, and all Oregon out through that area. Like I say, I've been out to Yellowstone National Park. I've been up. There's a mountain there in Yellowstone National Park that I actually walked up that thing. It was like 10,900 and something feet in elevation. Now the timberline.
What I'm getting at with that question is, I don't know far as a lot of the sightings, say, in Washington State versus Colorado, far as the elevation a lot of these sightings happen at and stuff. But
I've never been that way.
Washington State, I'm wondering, what's the elevation compared to Colorado, where he's seeing these, averagely smaller beings versus, say Washington State. And, I've never heard of, I've always heard that a lot of them are, the typical size, or, within that 7 to 8, 9, 10 foot range, say in Washington State. So I wonder, if it, just trying to figure out if they are a connection with elevation and their growth. Or, maybe like he was talking about last night, there, supposedly 5 different species of Bigfoot or whatever you want to call them, or genetics or whatever. And I just wonder if it's a different breed or one of the smaller breeds that he's, dealing with there in Colorado, or what.
Well, he said that he did say that uh, there were certain parts that they looked more ape and human like, and then there were other parts of Colorado that he had been that they looked Neanderthal like. So, that telling me that they got to be
Definitely
subspecies.
different, yeah, different species.
They've got to be. Let's see if I can get
But
Barry back on here.
But even, he even said that they still are about the same size.
Right.
Even though their physical features are a little different, they're, still in that same size range.
Right, and that goes like here in North Georgia, in northeast Georgia, all through or northwest Georgia, through the mountain range down here. Most people that have had encounters with these things say that they're, uh, they.
Well, typically here, say in the South, if somebody's seen a shorter being, then that's either going to be a juvenile or a female.
Right, and I have got reports, from over on the Appalachian Trail and Blue Ridge, that area over in there, where they've encountered the big males. Some of them 8, 10 foot tall. Some of them 18, 20 tracks. So that goes to tell me that the genetics that they have in the higher elevations out there is got to be different from what we've got out here. And now going back to your question, whether or not it's because of elevation, I don't know, but I'm sure it is because.
I mean, yeah, that explanation definitely makes 100%. It makes sense. I mean, because Barry was saying last night, look at some of these other countries and stuff like that where people live in super high elevation. They typically are small.
Right. But then, like going on up into Canada, and like I said, like Barry said last night, they got the whoppers up there. They got some of them that they say they run into. It's 12, 14 foot tall. And boys, I'm gonna tell you something. I've dealt with these things for the last 40 years and had encounters with them and throwing rocks at us and all kind of stuff. And I just I don't know where I'd want to run up on one of these creatures. 14 foot tall creature out in the woods, boys. That that's twice the size of a normal man. Over twice the size. How would you deal with something like that? How would your mind comprehend something like that?
And I remember Cliff Bartman, when I was at a conference, he was talking. He said one thing he learned from doing all those years of finding Bigfoot, he said the average witness is horrible at judging distance and size.
Right.
So when they start talking 14 and 15 foot, I wonder if maybe you can't knock at least a couple feet off of that. But 11 or 12 feet is big enough.
Yeah, that definitely could be misjudgment.
I mean, guys, could you actually imagine standing there?
Hey, he's going to feel when you're sitting there looking at a 10 foot, 8, 9, 10 foot creature. It's going to seem a lot bigger than what it is. So, I mean, you can't knock the people from being like, oh, this guy was 15 foot tall, because it probably felt like he was 15 foot tall.
Right. I mean, I can imagine, guys, I can really imagine. What I saw down there at the lake years ago, or down there at the creek years ago, was enough to boggle my mind that these creatures actually existed. And you can imagine standing there within 40 feet of one of these things and him 10 foot tall, and you standing looking up at this big creature,
And a lot of times, a lot of your encounters happen so fast that one, it's your brain's going through so much far as trying to figure out what's happening to begin with. I mean, yeah, I mean, I can see where their mistakes far as judgment of size.
Right,
And
complete.
there's some people, and there are a lot of people have encounters that aren't good at, say judge. I mean, unless you're somebody that's good at judging size of things, somebody could easily, think it's a lot bigger than what it actually is.
Barry, what would you say, Barry, would be the typical size of them in your region up there in Kentucky?
I don't know if y'all, oh, there I am. They range anywhere from your 7 foot to, they've got one up in northern Kentucky, Thomas Shays Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Group. They call it Goliath. Now he's supposed to be about a 10 footer, judging by the prints and stuff. I think Thomas may have even seen him once or twice.
Okay, well,
That's about the only 10 footer I think I've really read or heard about around here.
we interviewed a guy here a few weeks ago, and I can't remember how he broke it down, but he actually done a breakdown for us on size comparison by the depth and the width and the length of the tracks. And what he was saying actually made a lot of sense. I was actually going to talk to him after the show that night, and we got cut off, but and actually make out a chart as to what he was talking about, what he was referring to. But for some reason, I got cut off and couldn't get back a hold of him. But what he was saying that night was the depth of an actual footprint going down into the soft earth compared to what a human footprint is. Blake, do you remember what he was talking about that night, bud?
I remember, but I don't remember far as what he said, far as like the calculation.
Right.
That chart is out there on the internet somewhere. I've seen it before. The height, weight, footprint, depth.
How far the depth of the print, yes.
Right. I'm gonna look.
I remember seeing it, and I've tried to look it back up and get a copy of it, and I just ain't been able to find it.
Was it an inch for every? Was it 300 or 400 pounds or something like that? An inch or two for every 300 or 400 pounds.
That sounds about right.
Something like that.
So the one print he showed us last night, he was estimating it being what, 1.5 to 1.75 inches in depth, where it actually marked down.
Which would, I mean, that sounds about right. Now that you say it that way, I mean, we're talking 6 to 7 foot. It's what he said average height was. You could probably say 400 to 500 pounds for that size, which would be about an inch and a half.
Right. Yeah. Sure would.
So, perfect calculation if you look at it that way.
Yeah. I remember the print I found that you all saw. I think it was right at 2 inches deep, and that was frozen ground. Never mind the fact that, it was 2 inches deep. It was 2 inches deep in permafrost frozen ground. So, like I said, I could go out there and jump up and down, barely leave a mark.
Well, and that's something you've got to keep in mind with that chart too. Is it's not always going to be 100% accurate, depending on what type of soil or whatever you're dealing with. Wet, muddy stuff here in the South. I mean, it's probably going to be a couple inches per 300 or 400 pounds. I mean, just because it's so soft and you sink in it. I mean,
we got a couple of Earl Mangrum from Mississippi says hello. Let's see what he's got to say here. I'm in Mississippi and they are here too. Have a group by me.
Now, have you had any, Earl, if you're still watching, have you had any personal encounters? And kind of talking about what the subject we're talking about right now. I mean, what's if you have had encounters, seen a visual, or, know of any reports down there, what's the average size in your area? see if he.
You know, and this is something that I'm really interested in is to actually go from. I'd like to calculate, you know, from state to state and see what the typical size that people have been seeing in each state, and be
Yeah.
able to do a size comparison as to what we have here in North
Well,
Georgia.
if you really took the time to go through, you know, every report that has a estimated size, quote unquote, um, you could average together and actually find out what the average size
Mm-hmm.
would be.
I was gonna say, I was like you. I was kind of perplexed by it last night, where he kept saying those in Colorado, in his area, were so small. Because over the years, I've heard reports of Colorado. That's kind of where the big boys roam.
Yeah.
You got the 8, 9, 10 footers out there.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
I'm just,
Murray,
I want to
you got to
actually.
go back. You've got to go back to like Blake was talking earlier, though, and like Zeus said last night, you've got to go back to elevation.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, you know, that's what we're trying to figure out tonight. Is,
That's,
you know,
yeah, that's why I keep asking so many questions about elevation. Is that's what intrigues me. I've never thought about that. You know, it's never really come up much here, especially in the United
Yeah.
States. Because you know, most reports, like I said, you know, if something's over 8 foot tall, typically it's going to be a male. Typically, if you have anything below that, it's either going to be a female or a juvenile.
Yeah.
But are
Well,
they
just
some
like
that's like
actual
I was,
truth?
you know,
Are
that's
they,
like I was saying earlier.
but are they actually some truth to that? Which I see there being truth to the elevation thing. They've got to be some type of connection there. I mean, it only makes sense because, like you said last night, Barry. I mean, you know, it happens to us. So.
Yeah. But on the other hand, that other thing I was talking about, where the further north you go, the bigger animals tend to get.
Yeah.
I was comparing it to bears. You go from black bears in the south to brown bears in the Midwest,
Then you got
grizzlies
grizzlies
in
and
the
polar bears.
Northwest.
Yep.
Then you get up in British Columbia, you got the Kodiaks, and then go further north, you got the polar bears. They just keep getting bigger the further north you go.
Yep.
Right.
And from what I've heard of over the years, Sasquatch kind of tended to do the same thing. As you start on the East Coast and the South, they tend to be a little bit smaller, 7 or 8 foot. And every now and then you'll hear a 9 or 10 footer report. And then as you go out through the Midwest and up into the Northwest, it seems like same as the bears. They'll go from 7 to 8 foot to 9 to 10 foot. And then, like I said, you get up in Alaska, you start hearing about in Canada, you start hearing about the 12, 13, 15 foot tall.
Yeah.
And like I said last night, it kind of befuddles me how something 15 foot tall hides. But
yeah. Well, and something else that, you know, I understand that this, let's just bring Yetis into the aspect of things.
Yeah.
They typically live in, I know it's a different breed or different, whatever. We're not even going to go into that, but let's just talk about Yetis. Most of them live in higher elevations.
mm-hmm.
You would think, since they do live in higher elevations, you know, you hear Yetis have been 10, 11, 12 foot tall. Huge.
Yeah.
You know, if the elevation thing was relevant, then you would think that it would have the same effect on them, unless they're just used to that environment, and that's just, you know, that's they're more natural in that environment.
Well, going back what you said about witnesses, you know, like I said about people in Tibet, when I watched the TV thing with Josh Gates, the average guy over there is like 5'6".
Yeah.
So a 5'6" guy, a 9 foot tall Yeti might
It's
look
gonna seem like seem like it's huge.
Yeah. It could be as simple as that. They just look bigger.
Yeah, in interpretation and judgment.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Perspective is everything.
We've interviewed witnesses on the show that talk about they have encountered these things actually shaking trees, and this is like 70, 80 foot tall trees, and these trees shaking, just violently shaking. Well, I was out in Yellowstone back in 2000, and this really has nothing to do with a Bigfoot, but it's a little comparison that I'm going to tell you about. I was out there, and I had met a guy up at Mammoth Hot Springs, and I told him that I wanted to get a close up encounter with an elk. Well, we had left Mammoth. He had left. He and his wife had before us, and about 45 minutes, I guess, later, we drove down and was headed back out to one of the spots there in Yellowstone. But anyway, we'd got down maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 miles there below Mammoth Hot Springs, and this guy and his wife was standing on the side of the road, parked, had their car parked there standing, and he flagged me down. And told me, he said, "Hey, Rick, you said you wanted to get a up close view of an elk." He said, "There's one right across this ravine down here." He said, "If you get out and go around the edge of that field, you can get a good close up of him." Well, I had one of the old type video cameras that you put up on your shoulder, and VHS cameras, and I was on a cane, my boys. I'd had my foot busted up. I was on a cane to beat it all. So I started out this big field, and I walked probably a quarter of a mile across this thing or further. Get down there within 45, 50 yards of the tree line, and I look up, and this one tree, man, is just violently shaking. I'm standing here thinking, what in the world I've got myself into? I've got my camera up. I'm videotaping this. I step on it. There was a log that was blowed down, and a piece of limb come out, and it was kind of rotten. And when I put my foot up on it, it snapped under the weight of my foot. Well, this elk turned and came out of the wood line right at me. He was so close to me that I was actually seeing the steam come out of his nostrils. And I was probably within 15 foot of this thing, and I was still standing there videotaping this sucker. And he lets out this big huff and turns and just walks right off down this little ravine below me, just like it wasn't nothing. Mm-hmm. But dude, this is I'd say probably 500-600 pound animal, probably 500-pound animal. He was huge. But you take an animal that size compared to 800 to 1,000-pound Sasquatch, and that thing was shaking that tree the way it was shaking it. He was horning the tree, I guess is what he was doing. But you take an animal that size can do that, and you take a size comparison between that and a 800-pound Sasquatch grabbing hold of a tree and shaking it, and you can kindly see what these witnesses are talking about.
Yeah. Well, there's a funny story one of the Kentucky researchers here tells. Like I said, it's got nothing to do with Sasquatch, but kind of give you an idea. They's out one night, something starts crashing through the brush, and they're all hunkered down. Oh, we're getting bull rush. They hunker down and trying to get their cameras out. He said, it sounded like there was a locomotive coming through the brush. It was a raccoon. they're all freaking out, expecting an 8 or 9 foot tall Sasquatch to come popping out of the woods. It's a raccoon. He said, but that raccoon made as much noise as a locomotive coming through that brush. So, as far as the tree shaking thing, yeah, I mean, something as big as a Sasquatch could shake the fire out of a tree.
This kind of has to do with Bigfoot and trees, but I don't know if you've seen that video that Thinker Thunkers broke down of, I think it was in Canada, of one actually throwing a tree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, he actually figured out a rough estimate of the size of that tree, and I want to say it was like a 20 or 30 foot tree, and he threw it like 14 foot up in the air. And like he said, what can pick up a tree and throw it like that? It's not a human.
No. But the only thing, and the only reason I remember this, I think it was last night or the night before, I was watching Squatch Talk with Pat Turner, and he had a lady on there who said way back when that video first came out, she questioned Thinker Thunker on how he come up with his measurements of the tree and how far it flew and all that. And she said he just freaked out on her for even questioning. So it makes you wonder, is he? I mean, I like Thinker Thunker, but sometimes he gets a little defensive.
I understand it's hard to judge things at distance and size and everything when you're just looking at the video, but even if it was let's just say a 10-foot tree. Let's just cut it in half, cut it in a fourth. I mean, as far as that tree was thrown, I still don't see a human doing it.
No. Well, it's like the other video.
I mean,
that he's
regardless
got.
of what he's estimated his size, I mean, you still just use common sense at a certain point. I mean, you can clearly tell that whatever it is pretty big, and it throws something pretty big.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say it's like his other video of the Russian Bigfoot ripping the trees out of the ground up on the ridge. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
There's two possibilities. It's either a Sasquatch or somebody's using machinery to tear them trees down. That's pretty much it.
I'll go back. You're talking about trees and these things being able to toss trees around like that. When I was small, I was probably 7, 8 years old. My dad and two of my brothers, and all three of them were pretty good sized guys back then, cut pulpwood for a living for about, 4 or 5 years. And they would actually cut these pine logs into 8-foot sticks. And they would load these things by themselves, or well, the three of them would, these 8-foot logs, using the old I know you know what I'm talking about, Barry. They used them at sawmills to.
Oh yeah, I can't think what they're called, but I know what you're talking about.
What they would do, they would set ramps up on the side of the truck, and they would use these things to roll these logs up on that truck, and that took three of them on 8-foot logs that were probably this big around. It would take three of them to load a log, that big around up to that big around on a truck like that, using those turners. And that's three men doing it. Okay, you take even a 10-foot log like Blake said and something pick it up, and it actually showed that in that video. It at the edge of that wood line throwing that log. Guys, I don't want to mess with him.
No. That's gorilla or better strength.
Yeah. I mean, even the chance of it not being a real video, even let's just say it is a guy. I don't want to mess with that guy.
No.
Like whatever it is powerful, it threw it. I mean, even if we're talking a 10-foot log at say this diameter, you're still not going to pick that up and throw that 14 foot in the air at 30 foot away. I mean, that's not happening.
Well, it's just
that's like you and I down at the cemetery, Blake, and that thing chucking rocks. And Barry, where we were standing at was probably a good 50 yards from the wood line. This thing was throwing rocks this big around the size of a basketball through the treetop where we were standing at, and these rocks were landing at our feet, and they were coming from the wood line that was like 50 yards away. Now, guys, I don't even know of a guy that is a professional basketball player that could chuck a rock that size and the weight that rock is.
Especially not at dead standstill. I mean, there's some of these guys that, these Olympists that do the, what's it called?
That's what I was going to say. The shot put.
Yeah. I mean, they have to get the momentum up just to throw it as far as they do.
And you know how much an Olympic shot put for men weighs? 12.6 pounds.
Exactly. And they throw them far, but not.
The record's like 60 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
The world record.
We're talking 50 yards, right?
Yeah, exactly. And probably the rock weighs more than 12.5 pounds too.
Oh yeah, it rocks this big around.
They probably weigh 25 pounds or so. I mean,
and these rocks are being thrown and coming right through the treetops, landing at our feet. I mean, that thing.
You'd almost have to have a miniature catapult sitting out there loading it to launch.
Guys, if that thing had wanted to have killed one of us that night with that rock, I have no doubt. If it had wanted to have crushed our heads in with those rocks, it could have done it that night at that distance. No problem.
No problem. Well, that's like I talked to, you probably all have seen him, Jeremiah Fountain. Talks
Yeah.
about the one he saw made like, we did the math, and like the bounds it was taking was like 12 and a half, 13 and a half feet of bound. There ain't an Olympic long jumper in the world that can jump 13 and a half feet from like you said, a standing start, just pushing off with its toes and jump 13 feet. There ain't a human being in the world that can do it.
No. No way,
You know,
boys. I got
like these long jumpers that with that run and get a run and start. Yeah, you can jump that far, but not from a standing, not from just a
No, not from a dead stop.
point, just 1 point jump. No.
Yeah, and I've heard reports of high jumps where they'll jump 8 or 10 foot straight up a bank or something. But there ain't a human being in the world can come from a dead stop and jump 8 or 10 foot straight up a bank.
Yeah, I mean, even a basketball player, does not have a vertical like that. I mean, there's some guys out there that have like 40-inch verticals and 50-inch verticals, but that's about it. We're talking maybe 4 to 5 foot, something like that.
And they've got to get a 2 or 3 step head start.
Which is impressive, but not you're not jumping 10 foot up a bank.
No. Okay, guys, going back to 2018. And you can look it up on the internet, Barry. It's was actually reported to the Bigfoot Museum at Blue Ridge and also to the paper in LJ. Guy had actually had an encounter one afternoon coming home from work. He had this area over there going from what they call Cherry Log up to Blue Ridge is where he had his sighting at. This thing actually came across the road in front of him and went into a thicket where there was a dirt road at that had turned off. A dirt road turned to the left right above where he saw this thing at. And he had actually turned his car around after seeing it and went up and went down the dirt road, and it never came out on the other side across that dirt road. But this thing, he said it took 3 bounds. Now, this is a 4-lane road.
Mm-hmm.
You got 2 lanes running in one direction, 2 lanes coming back another direction. He was coming back east, and he said this thing came across the road in 3 bounds across that 4-lane highway and into that wooded lot on his right-hand side. Now, you tell me, there's no way that I know of anybody that could cross a 4-lane road in 3 big bounds.
Well, it's just like what I believe was my first sighting of the 3-lane highway. I told y'all it crossed the 3-lane highway in 6 or 7 strides at the most, and then started up an embankment that was like that me or you would have to use our hands to pull ourselves up this bank. It's so steep, and it just went right up it like it was nothing.
That's what I'm saying. And people
can't do that. No.
But you have people out here that say, "Oh, that was a bear. That had to have been a bear." Man, what I saw at the lake years ago was not a bear. What Blake encountered at the lake down there was not a bear. What we've encountered in these mountains around here has not been bears. I have bear hunted these mountains since I was 7 years old.
That's just like I don't think my fiance would care if I tell the story, but see, she believes in Bigfoot, but she don't really get down with the whole research thing or, far as going out in the field and stuff like that. Well, she had an encounter in Florida. Well, what she thought was a bear at the time, but once she explained the situation and what happened, what she saw, I told her, more likely what you saw was not a bear. They were in Florida. I don't know a particular area. It was a swampy area. They were basically in a road that went kind of straight through a swampland. You had swamp on both sides of the road. As far as I know, that where they were at was a good ways from an actual town or anything like that. Basically, she don't know how far it was in front of the car, but she just seen something run across the road in front of her, and she was like, she convinced she saw a bear, but she said it was on 2 legs, and she said it ran, and she said it was big, black, and hairy. I was like, like I had explained to her, bear do not run that on their back legs. Can they stand? Yes. Can they walk? Yes. But they more waddle when they walk.
Yeah, a shuffle.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
So
this goes back to Barry last night about talking about things. The closer you get to the equator, things being smaller. Well, that's Florida, for instance, guys. The skunk ape down there, the average on that thing, from most reports, is about 6 foot tall. Five
6
between
to 7, yeah.
she couldn't give an estimate on it, size or anything like that. But I actually sent her a picture of, I'm sure you've seen the trail cam photos of the supposed skunk apes that have been caught on trail cam in Florida. Which I sent her a picture of one of those, and that's what she said she pretty much saw.
Yeah. Well, going back to the equator thing, like you said, Ricky, in Florida, you got the skunk ape that's 6 to 7 foot tall. And I forget what country it's in where the orang pendek's at, but it's closer to the equator. And I think they are only like 4 or 5 foot tall.
right.
They look more like an orangutan that walks
Yeah,
upright.
I remember with Josh Gates doing a show on that.
Mm-hmm. It ain't New Guinea, New Poppy or somewhere like that, somewhere in
Something
Central
like that.
America.
Yeah.
But then I was listening the other night to Jeremiah had a guest on, and they said they have a bigger version, more Sasquatch like 7 or 8 foot tall creature down there too. So, it's the orang something other than pin.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure elevation does play a part, but I think it's more of actual species than anything.
I
Or
tend
genetic.
to.
What it different, difference, genetics.
Well,
I
just
don't know if
like
you know what they're
humans, you have genetic freaks. You got Andre the Giant that was 7'4" or 7'6", whatever he was. And then you had that basketball player from China that liked an inch or two being 8 foot tall.
When you got to look at just the variation in human size to begin with, from race and ethnicity to begin with. Different parts of the country, different races were, they're an average, but like say Africa for example, you have tribes of guys that are, all of them are 7 foot tall plus.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and you go to China, and average height's like 5 foot.
Well, I was gonna say in Africa you got the tribes that are 7 foot plus, and in another part of Africa you got pygmies.
Yep.
People are 3.5, 4 foot tall.
So pretty much same geographical area, but completely different as far as genetics.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about last night, just like body types and stuff. You go over to Iceland, Scotland, Ireland, everybody's kind of burly and heavy set and lucky if they break 6 foot. But then you go up to Iceland or Scandinavia, you got the Norse people that average like 6'6", blonde haired.
Giants. Yeah.
And that's all within a few thousand miles of one another.
Yeah.
So I knew, I'm pretty well convinced that genetics play a great role in what
we see. Yeah. What the difference in sightings.
Well, it's just like you talk about species, and we was talking last night. I think the general number I always hear is 7. There are 7 different species. But how many species of canines are there on the earth? Dogs, foxes,
nowadays hundreds.
wolves.
I mean, with all the crossbreeding and everything that's happened, and that's something we have to look at too, far as the Bigfoot species is crossbreeding. I mean, there are a lot of things I'm sure that happen in nature that cause things. Whether it be ancestry. I mean, I'm sure there's some incest going on. I mean, does that stunt growth? Does that have something to do with something? Of course, it could.
And everybody knows nothing's meaner than a mutt or a mongrel. You get these reports of real hostile clans of Sasquatch. Like you said, inbreeding, if they're a mutt or a mongrel, they tend not to be right in the head. It's just that simple. I ain't trying to be mean or nothing.
We got a question here, guys, from Filmer of Bobcats, Howdy, Central Texas here any clans around Houston, Austin, San Antonio. Uh, we have a guest that we actually became very good friends with, a Mr. Oh God, Richard Taylor from Texas. Contact Richard on Facebook, and Richard can give you more of a layout of what actually exists around the Houston, Austin, San Antonio area. Richard's out there, does extensive research in those areas. He's actually I think he told me like 60 miles from Dallas. So yeah, contact Richard, and Richard can give you a better layout of those areas than what I can.
Yeah, I can't give you a great answer on that myself.
He's asked about Houston, Austin, San Antonio. I've got one lady that I don't even remember how or why she contacted me. She's around the Fort Worth area. And she's one of them, according to her, she's got an area down there where you could bring a film crew and at will, just day and night.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, ma'am, I'm in Kentucky and I'm one guy. I can't just jump in the truck and drive to Texas.
Right. Yeah, contact Richard. It's Richard Stewart Taylor from Dallas, Texas. Just contact him on Facebook, and Richard can give you a lot better layout of the area around what your question or what you're asking about there in Texas.
Yeah, and Richard's a great guy, so yeah, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to help.
Richard's a great guy, and Richard will help you any way he can.
Like I said, as far as Texas, according to this lady, they're just rampant around Fort Worth, the oil fields. She claims they hang around the oil fields out there. Mary Bola in Texas. I'd have to look through my messenger. It's been a while since I've heard from her. But like I said, I have no idea how in the world she ever got in contact with me to begin with. And she just popped up in my messenger one day and was like, hey, I've got Sasquatch. And I'd help her if I could, but like I said, I'm in Kentucky. And I'm like you, I've tried to put her in touch with some Texas guys and Oklahoma guys, and she just keeps messaging me.
Right. Well, guys, actually, I have plans in the works to fly out and attend the one of the conferences with Richard in October out in Texas. I'm actually trying to find out if Southwestern Airlines flies out of Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm. He said that Mary Boland was Kevin Lang's friend there in the comments.
Right.
Name doesn't ring any bells for me.
No, doesn't
Kevin
ring.
Lang.
Yeah, and my advice for somebody that got questioned about their particular area is find a researcher that's in that area, because, like me personally, that's the reason. Like I don't really. I mean, I've read reports of other parts of the country, and we all do. Anybody that's in the Bigfoot, we do our little digging, but. There's nobody gonna know exactly what's going on other than somebody that's doing research in a particular area. Literature will teach you some things and answer some things for you, but if you can get in contact with somebody that's actively doing research in an area, that's the best person you can talk to.
I was gonna say, if nothing else, the BFRO is good for that. You can go on their website, state by state, county by county, year by year. And a lot of times you won't get a lot of details, but you'll at least get an idea of how many sightings.
My only problem with the BFRO, which my sighting is on the BFRO, but I've actually heard like some, I don't want to say sketchy stuff with the BFRO, but I know they pick and choose what goes on their website. There are a lot of stuff that they receive that you never hear anything about.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. They'll cut out anything that's remotely paranormal.
Well, they really did me dirty. Like I have a bone to pick with the BFRO, because I wanted my location to stay classified per se. I told them where it was. Well, okay. Let me back up. I did not tell them the exact location. I gave them the general area, the lake, and that was it. All right, my location for years. This was back in 2011 when this was supplemented to the BFRO. For years, it was classified. They were nothing about my location. When the last time I got on there and just happened to click on my report, they had put the location on there in GPS locations. I guess somebody did their job and found the only rural cemetery on that lake, and it just happened to be the rural cemetery that all this has happened at. Now it's on the BFRO for anybody to go where, at police.
I've heard things like that.
Filmer of
There's a
Bobcats
researcher here in
posted.
Kentucky. Go ahead.
Filmer of Bobcats posted the BFRO tried to convince me the whoops I heard and the track I saw were elks. And then
Do they
she
even have
commented,
elk in Texas?
I know Tennessee, far as here in the South, Tennessee's going to be a closer place to us that has elk. And that's
I think
only
Western Kentucky's got them. I've
I
never
know,
heard
yeah,
of elk in Texas.
I know we actually have some that's come from that where they turned them loose up on the Big Frog Range in Tennessee that have migrated over into the age of Georgia up on the Cohutta WMA. So we have them in this area now.
Well, of course. I mean, once something is
it's
went into the wild,
introduced, it's going to spread.
It's going to migrate. Well, that's like, we supposedly don't have black panthers here, but just right here in my driveway about 10 years ago, they were quite a few people see a black panther. It's a perfect example. I mean, eventually one is going to migrate enough to where it's where it shouldn't be, or where they say they don't exist. It's like gators. Supposedly we don't have alligators in this area, but they've been quite a few people find them on the rivers here and stuff like that. I mean, not a huge population, I guess, but all it takes is two.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said with the Black Panther thing, according to them, there's no Black Panthers east of the Rockies. And my pastor saw one cross the field up by his house a few years back.
Yeah.
And we had a lady right down on the county line videotape one crossing the field behind her house. And they showed up. Oh, no, that's a house cat. I said, if that ain't a Black Panther, it's doing a damn good impersonation of one.
Hey guys, I'm gonna tell you something. In 1983, my ex-wife and I had went over to pick our son up at his grandmother's house one night, and just about a mile this side of, well, not even a mile, probably, I don't know, a couple of 100 yards this side of where they lived at, there's a dirt road turned to the right that went back over next to where we lived. Well, we went down there and turned out. We'd picked our son up and went down there and turned out that dirt road, and just as we turned into the dirt road, there was a black cat laying right in the middle of the road. This thing was probably, I'm going to say at least 6 foot long, maybe 7 foot long from head to tail. And he was laying right in the middle of the road. Our car lights hit him. His eyes lit up like two big emeralds. And he was in the middle of this dirt road. This dirt road's about 10, 12 foot wide. This thing bounced up, made one leap, hit the bank, and then hit the woods and was gone. This cat was jet black. I'm talking, it was as midnight black as anything could have been. And dude, it was nothing but a Black Panther. But yet I reported it to DNR and I got laughed at.
Oh, yeah. Well, here last year, going fall into winter, we had a lady thought she saw a bear crossing the field here nearby. And one of my cousins called me and said, "You heard anything about a deer or a bear in there?" I said, "No." And of course, first thing they asked, "Seen anything on your trail cams?" "No." So I know the local game warden. Well, I messaged him. He messaged me back, "Nope, but if you see anything, let me know." Wait a minute here. Shouldn't it be the other way around? You're the game warden. There's a bear in there. Shouldn't you be telling me about it, not the other way? Do I have to go find it myself?
Guys, back in the 80s, and I'll tell you about our DNR here in Georgia. I don't know about anybody anywhere else, but back in, I think it was like 80, 85, 86, excuse me, I ran a taxidermy shop at Chatsworth. Okay. One morning I was in there with actually the commissioner from Murray County. I had done a coyote mount for him, and he'd come pick it up. Well, I'd got the coyote down and brought it in there and set it down. Well, I had these two guys run in. One of them was a boss up at Filler Products. He comes running in and he told me, "So Weaver, come out here and tell me what kind of deer I got." And I looked at him kind of strange. I said, "Well, Gene," I said, "it ain't but two kind of deer, in this area, a buck and a doe." And he said, "No, man." He said, "I got something out here. I don't know what it is." So we get up, me and the commissioner kind of look at one another. We get up and walk out to his truck, and boys, two of the strangest looking critters I ever seen in my life laying there in the bed of the truck. These things were full grown deer. Their horns was completely different than any whitetail I ever seen. They come up and kind of spiraled. And these things had spots on them just like a young fawn whitetail would have, but they were fully grown. I looked at him. I said, "Boys, I don't know what you got." I said, "I'm going to have to call DNR on this one." So I go back into the office and I called DNR at Calhoun and spoke with Tim Gilbreth, who was the game biologist for our area. Well, I explained, what they had out there. And Tim told me, he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "I'm about to come up and look at them." So 45 minutes to an hour later, Tim pulls up in the yard there at the shop and gets out, and I'd done already moved them in and had them hanging in the cooler by then. And Tim walks in there and swings the door up on my cooler and looks at him. And he turns around and looks at me. He said, shrugs his shoulders. He said, "Rick, I don't know what they are." I said, "Man, you're a game biologist and you can't tell me what." He said, "Look," he said, "I ain't never seen nothing like it." He said, "I will find out." I said, "Well, what about these guys are wanting these things processed and wanting the heads mounted? Can I go ahead and legally do that?" He said, "Well, no, just keep them in the coolers till I call you back." Well, about 5 hours later, he calls and informs me that these two deer that these guys had killed, and they'd killed them down in Floyd County. According to him, these deer were being raised by a guy in Floyd County down here, and they were fallow deer. They were indigenous to Switzerland. He said that they raised them over there like we raise cattle here to eat. That's what they do over there with these deer. And evidently these deer had gotten off a farm down there. So I asked him, I said, "Well, how did you find all this out?" He said, "Well, I made 15, 20 phone calls and was finally put in touch with this guy in Rome that's got this farm." And one of these deer were actually, when it was killed, was trying to top a white-tailed doe. So, guys, as far as a game species or our deer species goes here in North Georgia, there's no telling really what we have got running around in the woods. Kind of like Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah.
What else? I know that you told me another story of something that you got in there one time that wasn't supposed to be in Georgia. Wasn't it a piranha or something? Or?
Oh, yeah. Sure did. Guy caught one. Actually, he caught one up in the edge of Tennessee up there at Parksville Lake. Brought this thing in. He didn't know what it was. Laid it down on the counter. I got to looking at it. I didn't know what it was. I had to call Tim on that deal. Tim comes in. He asked the same thing, boys. Now him a DNR biologist. He didn't know what it was. He had to go do research. Called me back a few hours later and told me, said, "Yeah, it's a piranha." A week later, another guy catches one out of the Conasauga River and brings it in.
Well, my thing with that is, I mean, of course, those were introduced somewhere along the line. Somebody had a pet, somebody had something, it got put somewhere, and next thing you know, it's in a waterway. But it just proves that they can survive where they're not supposed to survive. That's like they were a pacu caught on the Tennessee River not too long ago, a couple years ago. This fish supposedly can't live in water below, I think it's 70 degrees or 80-degree water temperature. Water temperature around here during the wintertime gets, sometimes high 30s, low 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it just shows you things can survive where they're not supposed to survive.
Well, see, that's what Tim told me about the piranha that was caught and brought into the shop, was the fact that these things. He said that the climate
It's a tropical.
change.
It's a tropical fish. It's
Right.
supposed
This
to be
was
in
back
tropical
in
climate.
this
Yeah.
guy was back in the 1980s, and these fish were surviving in those waterways. Now, where they could actually breed and reproduce in that type of environment, I don't
Different
know.
story.
He
Yeah.
didn't say. But because of the climate change, and this was back in the 80s, you can imagine what we've actually got around here now as compared to our weather change over the last 20, 30 years. But back then, they were able to survive in that lake, in Parksville Lake, and in the Conasauga River.
Well,
So,
let's look at bull sharks. Bull sharks can survive inland to, they say to a certain, length, but heck, they've been found hundreds of miles
Miles
inland.
and miles inland, yeah.
Who's to say that like how far inland do we actually have sharks? I mean, of course, at some point it runs into a dam or whatever, and it can't go no farther.
Yeah.
But I mean, it shows you. I mean, they could easily populate somewhere where they're not supposed to be.
Well, Jeremy Wade did an episode when he was doing river monsters.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Australia, and like you said, this bull shark was 200 or 300 miles up a river, out in the middle of Australia.
Shouldn't be there. Yeah.
Should be no way it could have got there. But woe and behold, fish on. A few minutes later, he's got a bull shark.
Yep.
All right, guys, that goes right back to Sasquatch. People say that these things cannot exist in our woodlands. They can't exist in the mountain regions we've got around here. Guys, I saw them. Blake saw them. Barry, you've got them on your property.
On or around
if they're not supposed to be there, what's
but
going
yet
on?
It's there. Yeah.
Go out there and tell them that. That's what I tell people. Go out there and tell them they don't exist. I'll be right here when you get back.
That's exactly what I tell them.
I wish you the best of luck if they ever take me up on that.
Our government
cool enough to go out there and take me up on it.
Our government and our municipalities around here can blow smoke all they want to about the existence of Sasquatch. I know what I saw. Blake knows what he saw. Burry, you know what you've got going on up there. These creatures exist.
And right now is a perfect example of our government covering up things or not acknowledging something. They're getting ready to be some information released on UFOs that is going to change a lot of things when it comes to extraterrestrial life. They've already, because of that bill that was bill that was included in one of the stimulus bills. I was just watching something today on the news. They were talking to somebody from the Pentagon. The Pentagon's had a research program for like 40 years, 50 years on just UFOs. Why are you going to have a research program dealing with something that does not exist?
Yeah, guys, that goes back to Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book has been in existence.
Paperclip.
Since the 1940s, since the Roswell incident, and
Majestic 12, all that.
Supposedly in the late 90s, they killed Project Blue Book. They didn't kill that. It's still an ongoing investigation.
Replaced it.
Right.
And this guy that I was watching, it was like CNN or Fox, or it was one of the huge news channels. And this guy from the Pentagon just blatantly says that we don't know what they are. They're UFOs. They are extraterrestrial. We have no explanation for what it is.
Well, the name kind of says it all, unidentified.
Yep. He says it's one of two things. Or he says one of three things. Either our technology and we have poor communication far as testing, another country's technology, and we're just not good at our job, or three, it's something from somewhere else. That's exactly how he put it.
Yeah. And
guys,
some of the
what-
videos and stuff, I think pretty much rule out the first two because I've seen some videos where they do things that nothing we've got can do.
And that's what they said. They don't understand, like how these things have no motorized force, and yet they're able to, like break. He was talking about how they've actually of breaking the sound barrier with no sound. Like,
Mhm.
how is that physically, to our understanding of physics, that is impossible.
Yeah. Well, the whole metaphysical or paranormal or whatever you want to call it field, Bigfoot, UFO, spirits, science has kind of dropped the ball and fell behind. They won't admit it, but they've just flat ran into things that they can't figure out. You'll never hear them say that, but that's what it
That's the
boils down
problem.
to.
So,
Well,
so
that
many
goes.
people don't believe something's real because of scientific proof.
Right.
Scientific proof.
That goes back to Sasquatch, boys. They holler all the time. Every big scientist, whatever, that gets up and talks on the theory of Sasquatch, it comes right down to the same old jargon. We've got to have a body. If we don't have a body, we don't have proof that these animals exist or these creatures.
Yeah, you can have all the DNA in the world, but without a body, that DNA is useless.
Right. Well, guys, my feeling
I'm kind of
on
like
this
Blake.
is
I've
that,
just got to the point where we don't really need the mainstream scientific community. If they don't want to admit it, they want to stick their heads in the sand, let them.
What's it going to change? The people that know it's real know it's real. The people that don't know, the people that don't believe or don't care to believe, they're just going to continue to care and not believe.
guys, I believe I believe our government knows these creatures exist. I believe they're doing just like they've done.
Ricky, you know I've had two encounters with I've had two encounters with government officials when it comes to this situation or this topic, and one went one way, the other went completely the opposite. One was an NSA officer back in 2010, 2011 time. I can't remember if it was before or after I had my sighting. I won't say it was before. Me and my dad ran into him down at the same location I had my sighting, and a group of four of them. And long story short, he sat there and talked to us for about 30 minutes and gave us all kinds of information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I gave the BFRO his phone number, and they actually contacted him and talked to him himself. Of course, he said things a little different than what he told me, but he didn't lie. Of course, I'm not, his name was never exposed, which, I think that's one reason he did talk about it, because they were no way to prove that somebody released information that shouldn't have released information.
Yeah.
But the government knows.
Oh, yeah, like I said, if they don't know, they're horrible at their job.
Job, exactly. And that goes back, we were just talking about the Roswell, New Mexico, or, that's one of my biggest things with the Roswell, New Mexico crash. Two things happened with that. Either it was a misidentification, and our government's just, the government's just stupid, or they're hiding something. One or two things.
And
I'm going to go with option
guys,
B.
on that, they said there was a debris field about 400 yards long where this thing crashed at the Roswell. Okay, now let me get this. A weather balloon.
It's a balloon. It's a balloon.
That's what I'm saying. These things, these weather balloons, they let go back then were maybe 8-10 foot tall. Okay, you take a 10-foot tall weather balloon that crashes in a farmer's field. Now, is that going to leave a 400?
No.
Well, you're not going to have any debris.
Material.
You're not going to have any debris.
And even if somehow it got ripped apart, there's not 400 yards worth of material in a weather.
You're not going to have metal parts and actual physical. Yeah. Yeah.
What's like the whole UFO?
That goes back, guys. Just like anything the government don't want the American people to know, they're going to cover it up.
But it's took, let's see, that was in what, 45,
47.
47?
47.
47, here we are. It's 2021. It took all these years, and now the government's like, oh, yeah, we've known about them. They're there. Y'all aren't crazy. I mean,
Well, like I was talking the other night, the UFO group got together and did the whole Occupy Area 51 thing. And like you said, it started off as a joke, but then it got out of
it's become
control.
reality. Yeah.
And the government, I guess, realized these people are serious. They want to know about UFOs. They're willing to storm a military institution to find out.
You can't hide it forever.
No.
That is
What
one
I
of
was
the
gonna
main
say,
things.
The Bigfoot community has never had that big push. Well, like I said, we don't have a Area 51 for Bigfoot that you can go jump the fence.
Barry, we really don't know what we've got out there, buddy.
And
I
I
don't
think
doubt
part
that
of
they
the
have
big
bodies somewhere, but it ain't like
we
Area
don't- we
51.
Well, that's
Where
what
you
I'm
know
going
where
to
to
say.
drive right
I
to
don't
the
think
gate.
I don't think we have a community of guys that's just willing to go do some stupid stuff just because other people don't believe.
Yeah.
Like if you've had a sighting, if it's what you're into and you like research and everything, you don't need somebody else telling you if it's real or not.
No.
That's the reason we're
initially,
involved
my
in
point
this
is-
community.
The UFO community bugged the living what out of the government until they got tired of it and finally said, yeah, you're right. There's such thing as UFOs. And the Bigfoot communities just never took it to that level.
Yeah. Well, there's no need for it.
Well, no, but now with shows like this and like yours, Barry, it is being brought to the forefront.
Yeah, but the subject's still not being pushed like Barry's talking about. I get what Barry's saying. Like, even though it has become more popularized and it's out there more as far as the subject of Bigfoot, and a lot of people are more accepting of it now, of course, and people are talking about sightings that they had back in the 60s and 70s now because it's not so much taboo, and people don't really look at people crazy when the subject of the Bigfoot's brought up.
Hmm.
But you don't have a group
Well,
of people out there
that's so,
pressing
Blake,
the
but I'm gonna tell
government,
you,
for answers.
Yeah. Like I said, we
That's
just
true,
never
but I'm gonna
pushed
tell you,
it like
boys,
the
right now.
UFO groups have.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you right now, boys. If one of us, me, Blake, you, Barry, if one of us walked out here tomorrow and shot and killed a Sasquatch and threw that thing in our truck and went down here to the local DNR, what do you think would happen?
Oh, they take it.
Boys, it would be covered up so fast, it'd make your head swim.
I was actually going to ask Barry something earlier. You bring that up about a body with that like that. Do you remember seeing? I think it was in 2005, 2006, 2007 time of a body being found here in Georgia, in North Georgia, in Blue Ridge area.
Was that the one that the two of them had it in an ice chest?
Yes.
Right.
It turned out to be a fraud. It was a
They ended up saying it was a fraud, but
stuffed in it.
It could have actually been a body though. It's one of those circumstances. It could have been a body, and that's just same as going back to like Roswell and things like that to do with the government and stuff like that. I mean, we would never know if it was a real body or not.
Well, to Ricky's point, if you throw it in the truck, you don't take it to the DNR. You call everybody you don't tell them, meet me in the Walmart parking lot in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And bring your phone camera.
Yeah.
Make that thing go viral
before anybody gets their
they
hands
can't
on
shut
it.
it down.
Yeah.
Guys, it would still, guys, it's no matter what we do in the Bigfoot community, it doesn't matter. Even if we had one down there.
It would automatically get labeled as a hox.
Right,
It don't matter if
right,
it went
automatically.
viral, if they were 10,000 people that seen that same thing and touched that creature, and you could tell it was a living, breathing creature of a corpse, it still wouldn't matter. The
government would be out there and seize that thing within 10 to 15 minutes, boys. And
the only way you could get proof scientifically without the government getting involved and taking the body would be, one, to know somebody that works for some type of lab that can keep their mouth shut. You do independent DNA tests, independent research on the body, And even then, once you do all your research, if you release any of that research, it's still going to be no significance.
Well, look what they did to Mildred. I mean, she was a perfectly respected academic scientist until she researched Bigfoot. And they was even
Right.
behind
And they
her on
run
the DNA until she admitted, well, this is Sasquatch DNA. And that's when the scientific world just, oh, she don't know what she's doing.
But you knew what she was doing the rest of the time. She
Right
was
up to the point the word Bigfoot got mentioned.
That's what I'm saying, boys. The government don't want people to know these things are out there.
And that just goes back.
I believe it'll be one thing, just like the UFO subject. At some point in history, it will come out and it will eventually be acknowledged, whether it be 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, or longer. At some point, it will come out, but I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime or your lifetime, Barry. I mean, it's just for whatever reason. I mean, whether if it's beyond our understanding of what they know that we don't know about them, and that could be it. Just them not wanting to know the general population to know the truth behind something, and because it would change a lot of how we understand things.
Well, it goes back to the Brookings report in the 70s. They released it in a nutshell about UFOs. That's what it said. We couldn't admit to alien life because the population couldn't handle it.
Yeah, because there's so many closed-minded people out there. They're what sheeps. Let's just call them sheeps because that's what they are. That's what this country. Not to bring anything, I'm not going to say too much, but that's what we're going through in this country right now.
Yeah.
Same circumstance. There's so many people that can't think for themselves and cannot distinguish from what they're taught in reality.
Yeah. And just like the Brookings report was talking about, it would have social implications, it would have religious implications, political implications. Like you said, it would change
everything. It changes everything.
It changes how you look at the world.
Yep.
Plain and simple. Now, I think people would handle it better than they give them credit for. Because if nothing else, Hollywood's kind of conditioned us with all the movies and even about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
They've slowly kind of got us used to the ideal. So that now,
here's another thing, though, Barry.
White House lawn, most people be like, I guess Will Smith.
Here's another thing, though, Barry. 90% of the Hollywood movies produced about Bigfoot are horror movies.
Yeah.
They portray these creatures as being bloodthirsty creatures that'll kill you if you walk into their territory.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be, that's farther from the truth than anything could be. As of what I've experienced out of these creatures.
Yeah. But it does exactly what they wanted to do. If they could convince people of that, there's fewer people going to go out there looking for them. Because people don't want to get ate.
True.
And like you said, and like Blake said, a lot of people, if they see it on TV, it must be true.
Yep.
Well, that goes back to the deal, yeah.
Well, it used to be the same way with alien movies. Aliens were always the bad guys. They were going to show up and shoot us with their death rays and take over. And slowly but surely, now you see movies where the aliens are friendly or indifferent. They've kind of slowly phased the whole, well, I wouldn't say phased it out, but you know what I mean. They've kind of put them in a more positive light.
Yeah, that brings me back to the old movie that came out years ago, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Look, I think we have aliens that walk among us. I know this is a little off in left field, but I have a feeling, or I don't have a feeling, but intuition that, especially when it comes to a lot of our powerful people in the world, there's something else to control.
Could be. It's possible.
It's just
Well, guys,
weird
Richard,
how families run run the world. You know, we have three major banks in the world. A lot of people don't realize this. The Rockefellers, I cannot remember the other two, but they have more control over political stuff and it just how the world works than most people realize.
Oh yeah.
oh, most definitely. I mean, you have the Rockefellers, you have the families over in Greece that control the money. Uh, guys, big money controls our economy.
Oh,
Big
yeah.
money controls our world.
Oh yeah.
Whatever the big guys with all the money wants done is what's going to be done.
Yeah. They call it the power behind the throne, or whatever you want to call it. The shadow
Exactly right.
government, or yeah, but yeah, like you said, follow the money. At the end of the day,
That's
I forgot what movie that's from, but follow the money.
Yeah, that's the whole deal.
Yeah.
And I think that goes right back to the deal we've been discussing tonight about Sasquatch. We, you know, until our government decides they want us to know that these creatures are out there, they're not going to admit it. It's going to be mass hysteria right now if they was to come out. If a government
It'll be
official,
just like the UFO thing. They you know, oh, they're not. Oh, we're just kidding. You know, we were just testing y'all. Yeah, they're real. I mean, sorry for lying to you for the last 60 years, but you know, I mean, you know, y'all figured it out. You got us.
Yeah. Like you said, eventually, somewhere down the road, something's going to happen where somebody gets lucky and splatters one all over I-75, or a Boy Scout troop goes out and finds a dead body, and 50 kids whip out their phone and start taking pictures, or just something will slip through the cracks sooner or later.
Yep. Just like everything, they are not 100% perfect. Something will happen eventually where something significant is found.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's already been. Then you go back to, I'm sure it already has.
Yeah.
We just never heard about it, or these stories of bodies supposedly being found, quote unquote stories that were actually 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
well, guys, you go back to the internet, for instance, back in what was it, 1980, when Mount St. Helena erupted.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly there were bodies found then that the government covered up. You know, and that's where go back to 1924. That's where the Eighth Canyon happened. At was Mount St. Helena, where the guys where the miners were trapped in a cabin all night long with these ape-like creatures. They said bombarding their cabin with rocks.
Mm-hmm. Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah,
wrote a report in his book about two campers or two trackers. One of them was killed by a Sasquatch.
right.
And not to open a whole another can of worms, but every few years you hear this conspiracy about Bluff Creek and Patty and Gimli and Patterson. What went on there? There was a massacre. The Canadian government had sent a team of trackers with dogs, and they were running Patty, and that's how it happened. Bob Gimli and Patterson just happened to be there, and these guys chased them out of that area. And we'll never know the truth about that. I'll say Bob Gimli's probably the only one still alive that would know. And he stuck to his story.
He stuck by his story all these years. He's been through ridicule. He's been through, everything, and stuck by the same story.
But every few years that comes up, the Bluff Creek Massacre conspiracy.
That goes back to 1969 in the Smoky Mountains with the Dennis Martin case.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Martin, 6-year-old, came up missing in the Smokies, just 3 miles across the park. The Keys family, an hour later, told the game wardens that they actually saw a hairy man or a hairy creature, or man, they said, that looked like it had something, like it had a sack thrown over its shoulder when this child come up missing. there's actually a guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's actually got tapes on YouTube where he actually testified on YouTube that the government paid his family to go in up there and kill what they call these wild men, and they were brought out on flatbed trucks at night under the cover of darkness where people would not know what was going on. And this was back at the time when the park was first founded up there.
Well, David Pilates has covered that story, Dennis Martin, and that's where a lot of people get the connection between the missing 411 and Bigfoot, even though David Pilates never makes that connection. David Pilates is the best I know. I've read his book, watched his videos. He's never connected missing 411 and Bigfoot. But because of that Dennis Martin case, everybody else makes the connection for him.
Speaking about the missing 411, of course, people come up missing all the time. It happens here. They come up missing, they're found, eventually found or not ever found. That's the thing with the missing 411. One of the crazy things about it is, bodies these are people that have just disappeared. Bodies never found. Okay, don't get me wrong. Most of them happen around natural forests and stuff like that. National forests and stuff like that. So yes, I mean you could easily get off track, walk 15, 20 miles, and just you'll never be found. Don't get me wrong, but not every single one of them.
Oh no, there's some of them cases that are just weird.
Yeah,
I mean really weird.
Yeah.
Especially
these people that are in that same area for years before they ever come up missing. They know that land more than anybody. They know where they're at. They're not going to get just turned around. If you spend so much time in the area, even at night, there are people that know where they're going. Okay, you can't explain those people.
No, and it's like the cases where they have a 6-year-old kid that crosses 6 or 8 miles in a day at a mountain range. Well, there ain't no way that kid covered that kind of space and territory in that amount of time.
No.
Because there was one, he had Les Stroud on there. Les Stroud's like, I'm not sure I could do it, let alone a 6-year-old kid. And then there's
that goes back to
one famous one from Georgia. The work crew, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was like a road crew. They're like in a line 60 foot apart down the side of a road. And he was the last in line 60 foot from the guy in front of him. They turn around, he's gone, and all they ever found was, I think, one of his boots in a fence.
Where did he go?
Right, I know the case you're talking about.
Yeah, nobody ever saw nothing. Nobody ever heard nothing. And all they ever found was one of his boots.
Where did him and the other boot go?
Yeah, exactly. And I can't believe an 8 to 10 foot tall, 600 to 1,000-pound creature run up and grabbed a full-grown man 60 foot away.
And nobody the guy didn't make no sound or nothing.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Some of the cases give you the willies. It's just like something ain't right.
You got that right for sure.
He done fell into another dimension or something.
That's my most popular, and like you said, this is kind of left field, but either dimensional or time slips. Where they were
glitched somewhere. Something happened.
Yeah, they walk through a portal or a glitch or something and can't get back. Whether it's time or dimensions or, well, time is a dimension. So.
Yeah.
Because there was a case here, right here in this local county. These two guys were deer hunting. They drove down this road into a valley. They said it started getting kind of foggy around them. Was the fog cleared, they look around, they see houses and people, but they said like the people standing out in the yard stuff looked like they were dressed from like the 1800s stuff and didn't really pay any attention to them or anything. Well, they finally found, after driving, I think a half an hour or so, they got creeped out and found a place to turn around, drove back up out of that holler. Said when we got back to the top of the holler, out of the holler, the fog was gone. We went back. The houses, looked normal. The people looked. There was cars and trucks in the driveway. They said it was like we went backwards in time or something, and saw this valley like it was 100 years ago or something, like in the pioneer days. I said, I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't turned around when you did and got your tail ends up out of there. If that fog had dissipated while you were still in there or whatever, you may have never heard from those two guys again, trunk and all. That's one of the weirdest stories I've ever read or heard about reported.
Brings up a lot of questions, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that happened if not before I was born, close to it, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I read about it. Like I said, that's just one of the strangest things I'd ever heard.
Right. That goes back. Well, okay, guys, that goes back to the deal, of Sasquatch being able to be right in your face one minute
and gone the next.
And gone the next. Who's to say they're not walking in and out of a portal, a time dimension or something?
I can't say they're not. I think a lot of that, when people say they just disappear or whatever, I think sometimes people's minds the trauma or whatever you want to call it, they block certain parts out. Like all of a sudden you see a 10-foot tall monster standing right in front of you, or your brain just kind of shuts down. So it might have ran off to the left and your brain fills in that you blinked and it was gone.
Well, that's like my sighting. I mean, my personal sighting, I actually seen them walk into the wood line. I seen them leave. But I can say that once they were out of sight, it was like they were never there. You didn't hear nothing. You didn't see. Like, it was just, it just shows you how good they are at being quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't no more than 20, 30 foot into the wood line because it was fairly thick where they walked into. It's just like they weren't there no more. You didn't hear no leaves. You didn't hear no rustling. You didn't hear no walking. You didn't hear nothing.
And mine was kind of the opposite. Even after it got out of sight, I could hear it crashing down through there. Like I said,
and what they could have done, they could have literally just went far enough into the wood line and stopped. I'm not saying that they disappeared. I'm not saying that they kept going. I'm just saying once I did not see them, I did not hear nothing.
Yeah. That goes back to the sighting I had in 81. That one turned, bound maybe three leaps and into the wood line about 40 yards behind it, and it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, didn't see any leaves, didn't see trees shaking, didn't hear anything breaking, going through the brush or whatever. It just as soon as it went in to the wood line, it was like the forest swallowed it up.
Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it.
Oh yeah, I totally believe that. And like I said, I can't say that they didn't jump through a portal or whatever, but they didn't have to. They're good enough that.
No, it's like you don't watch
They could have been, just right out of sight, sitting there looking at us. All I know, I mean.
That's it. Well, guys, we're a little over an hour and a half here. I'm gonna go ahead and close the show out. Barry, we thank you very much for joining us tonight. You got a standing invite anytime you want to come back, have another discussion. It's been very good.
I don't have time to do my own show anymore.
Well, hey, buddy, we've all time got good guests on here. Like I said, anytime you want to come back and help us sort this thing out, the thing we call Sasquatch, you're more than welcome.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, I like our conversations.
I sure do. Yeah. We go from Bigfoot and cover all aspects.
Who's to say it ain't all connected somehow? I mean,
I'm with you on that. In a way it is. In a way it is. Even if it's not directly connected, it's all unexplainable. Like that. That's the main connection. They're not a direct answer for any of it.
That's right. That's
That's
just
what I
like
was going
this
to say.
weird
I
thing we
don't,
call
I don't
life.
necessarily believe Bigfoot climbs out of a UFO, but as you figure out UFOs, you might be one step closer
You
to
might
figuring out.
you might start figuring some stuff out. Yeah.
Same thing with the Loch
Exactly
Ness
right.
monster or
Any
lizard
type of
people.
cryptic or
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
If you figure out one, you're one step closer to figuring it out at all.
Yeah, because if you can get an explanation for one, that may help you get an explanation for another.
Exactly. And until you do, nobody's right and nobody's wrong.
It's all theories. That's all it is. We're all opinions and theories.
And we may never figure it out, like you said, at least not in our lifetime. But we all might be whistling Dixie, but
Well, guys, if we do, I'm sure I'll probably be long gone. But you two guys are a lot younger than me, so maybe in y'all's lifetime, y'all get an answer.
oh, like I said, somebody could get lucky tomorrow.
Well, that's true.
It doesn't make a difference to me.
No.
But guys, I go back. That's like the guy out in Colorado that claimed here a few years ago that he actually shot one and buried it. They went back and dug it up, buried it under a bunch of limbs and stuff. They went back and dug it up, and all they found was a piece of hide. He claimed that he had blood on his boot from the creature that he killed. All right, they done DNA on just a patch of hide that they found. They claimed it come from a black bear. They run tests on the boot, and they said there was a visible stain on the boot. But they run tests on the boot, and they said that there was no trace of any type of blood found on the boot. So, who knows?
Yeah.
And matter of fact, that was on a documentary on TV today.
That's like they say, don't believe anything you hear and half what you see.
That's it. That's it.
100% true. There.
All right, everybody. Good.
Have a good one. God bless.
See you, Barry.
We've had a good show. We've had a good show tonight. We've really enjoyed having Barry on the show with us. Barry's a real good guy. Y'all be sure and go in and go to YouTube and check out his channel. That's Prayen and Squatchen. Barry's a real good man. I really enjoy talking with Barry. I really enjoy our discussions we have with him. And everybody, people that watch tonight, thank you. People that watch it in the future, thank you. Blake, you got anything before we close out, bud?
Just have a good night, everyone. I do apologize about our randomness, but it made for a good conversation. If you're not already subscribed, you like the content, we're a little shot out sometimes, but if you don't mind, just hit the subscribe button, bell notification, like, and a comment, and we do thank you guys. That'll be all, Ricky.
Yeah, guys, as Blake said, we get a little left field every now and then off our subjects that we're talking about, but hey, we try to cover all aspects of the cryptic, UFO, whatever. And if you guys have got any questions, post them, and we'll be glad to read them, and maybe we can figure this thing out together. Good night, everybody. Everybody, God bless, and we'll catch you on next week's show.